would like to invite Ms. Haya Iman Zahid, Barrister Haya Iman Zahid, apologies, Chief Executive Officer of the Legal Aid Society. At LaS, Haya leads justice sector reforms, legal empowerment initiatives, and community-based legal aid programs. Thank you, Haya. Do I have the slides working? Okay.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure and a joy and a privilege to welcome all of you this afternoon at this event on behalf of the National Commission for Human Rights and the Legal Aid Society. Today we're gathered here to dive deeper and deconstruct the underlying issues that perpetuate this menace, this evil of forced conversions. And in particular, what makes today's discussions a little different, a little nuanced, is that we're going to talk about forced conversions, but through the garb and guise of marriages. And what is at stake over here is not just the infringement of our fundamental right to freedom of religion, but there is a duality of violation, because in essence, those most susceptible and most vulnerable are our children. So this is an issue, a chronic issue of child abuse at the intersections of this growing religious intolerance in Pakistan that we need to have the guts and the courage to talk about. And so my colleague who will present to you snippets of our research today will go into this in detail, but I must highlight one or two insights that we've obtained from the research. The first being that these instances of forced conversion through marriage are not isolated. They're not happening in pockets in rural areas of Pakistan. These are systemic. They are systemic because a culture of impunity is allowed to exist. They are systemic because there's a culture where poverty, gender-based discrimination, and religious intolerance all sort of intersect with each other. And who loses out? Our children. Our children whose futures are robbed, whose voices are silenced, whose families are intimidated. And that's kind of the title of the documentary that we have over here to share with you. So my question really is what is the point? What is the point of gathering here and doing this in the corridors, the powerful corridors of Islamabad? I think it's quite simple. The panelists that we put before you here today are the best of the best because they put their life at risk every single day when they do their activism on these issues. They come from these communities and they are the authentic voices. So they are the champions who can tell us best. And then you have some particular insights from our research, and then you have storytelling from a documentary in which you have actual survivors that have come forward and shared their journey with us and their hopes and aspirations. So the documentary, the panel discussion, the research report. ये महज एक औजार है बात करने के. So I'll try to do a bit of English. These are just tools because we need these tools to spark and ignite empathy, solidarity, collective action. We need these excuses to come together because, enough of being armchair intellectuals. We need reason to come together and to raise our voice in solidarity for those that are in this perpetual cycle of marginalization. And that is the very hope that the Nchr has, that the Legal Aid Society does. And I want to talk a little bit about, at the risk of being a little provocative, I'll start with Faiz, and he says, निसार में तेरी गलियों के ए वतन के जहाँ, निसार में तेरी गलियों के ए वतन के जहाँ, चली है रस्म के कोई ना सर उठा के चले. It comes from a place of hopelessness. If we're not going to call out religious bigotry, extremism, intolerance, then how do we manage to hold our heads up high when we see so much injustice in society? But this comes from a place of hopelessness and despair, but because Tahira Appa is sitting in the crowd, so it gives me a lot of courage. So I'll be a little provocative, Chairperson, and I hope that you'll indulge. I'll recite something else which some of you may have heard. बर्बाद गुलिस्तां करने को बस एक ही उल्लू काफ़ी था. बर्बाद गुलिस्तां करने को बस एक ही उल्लू काफ़ी था. हर शाख पे उल्लू बैठा है. अंजाम गुलिस्तां क्या होगा? कहने का मकसद मेरा यही है कि हमें आगे बढ़ने की ज़रूरत है। एक गलत सोच रखने वाला इंसान, एक यूनियन काउंसिल, एक लोकल गवर्नमेंट, एक कम्युनिटी सेंटर कहीं भी अगर आ जाए तो इस गुलिस्तान में वो they spread this poison, and it is very important for us to call out the mindset, because gender equality, inclusivity, right to freedom of belief, these are not buzzwords that we need to talk about in such gatherings. These are lived realities. We must be true to the cause. And I hope that you walk away today, with some sparks ignited in you. All of you are already fighting the good fight. That is why you took out your precious time to come here. A little bit about the Legal Aid Society. I have some slides over here, but I think broadly the purpose, we work at the intersections of gender and child security. We work on climate resilience, but in essence, we're a legal aid office. We're a legal aid office that was founded by Justice Nasir Aslam Zahid to bridge the chronic justice gap, to represent the marginalized, women, children, members of religious minority groups. I'm very proud of the fact that in the last 10 years, we've represented 2,800 women, children, members of marginalized groups before courts, with an 84% success rate. So I leave you with this note that justice can be achieved in Pakistan no matter how broken the system is. Things can be done, and legal empowerment of the people lies at the root of this. To know what your rights are so that you can come forward and play a meaningful role for those with privilege to do that, to lend their voices to others, and to the others that are facing the injustice themselves so that they are uplifted and given a chance. Milke hum sab ne kaam karna hai for a Pakistan which aligns with the vision of Qaid. A Pakistan which is equal for all, where justice is a promise for everyone, irrespective of age, gender, and absolutely irrespective of one's faith. Thank you very much. Bahut shukriya.
Thank you, Haya, for grounding us in the urgency of the matter and for reminding us that forced marriage conversion remains a larger issue of intolerance and inequality that we must, as a society, collectively confront. This brings us to our next segment, which would be a brief presentation of the findings of our report, which will be delivered by Ms. Maliha Zia Lari. Maliha Zia is a feminist lawyer and a women's rights activist. Thank you, Maliha, if you could join us.
Thank you so much. Sorry, yes, the clicker is there. Thank you so much, Dr. I'll be very brief about the report because I think we'd rather hear from all of the wonderful panelists who are here today as well to speak about the actual issues that we are facing. So very first off, जब हम forced conversion through marriage की हम बात करते हैं, when we raise the issue, very often we get two points of view. We have one point of view which says this is a terrible thing, it's happening all over, the impact is absolutely awful. And then you have all of these people saying they're not forced marriages, they're consensual marriages. These are girls who want to run away, have their own lives. And आप feminist होते हैं, you're feminists, and you're saying she shouldn't have a right of choice of marriage. And this is the backlash and the constant two discussions or the heads that are always banging that way. But the reality is, whether we are talking about numbers, we have disputed numbers, we have no exact figures of actual cases of forced conversion of marriage. But the fact is, it does happen. And women who come back, escape from these violent marriages and tell us that these happen. We have hundreds of people on the ground who are telling us, who have seen it, families who have suffered, families who are still suffering, the children of some of these survivors, the activists who are working on ground who tell us that these do happen. So at the end, does numbers even matter? And they don't, because the impact is much worse than whether it's 1, 10, 10,000 or 1 million. The reality is the majority of the victims are children. They are from religious minority communities of Hindus and Christians. Most of the crimes, and I would say almost all of the crimes, form some form of sexual violence. And lastly, as a country, we have had a very different way of dealing with it with no consistency in this. So we wanted to write this report. The main idea behind this report is that we keep focusing on a response knee-jerk reaction. Ab ye case ho gaya, wo case ho gaya, what are we supposed to be doing? While we talk amongst ourselves, those of us who are working on it, yes, this is what happens, these are the reasons why they're vulnerable, we have very little actual research and documentation on this. So our main, we can read this, I'm sure you'll read the report and the slides at the back, but the main idea behind this was Why do the perpetrators do this? And what are the vulnerabilities of these specific groups which make them susceptible and continuously susceptible to these forms of violence? And that is what we wanted to talk about in order to work on a preventative strategy on forced conversions through marriage. I won't go into details about the report as such, but it is a qualitative report. We have interviewed many people across Sindh and Punjab, including survivors themselves, in order to be able to capture a realistic picture of why and how this happens. But first, before we start that, it's very important to understand the concept of forced conversion, because this is a term that we use very easily, and that's the common terminology that is used. But in reality, it's not one act. This crime actually is two acts. One is the forced conversion itself, which is coercion in changing your religion, and the second one is coercion into marriage without consent. Currently, when we go to court for this, we have to prove those two separate acts, because we don't have a specific section in law which refers to forced conversion through marriage. We have forced marriage separately, and then we have Article 20 under the Constitution, which is right to religion, so you have to file two different cases. So we have to prove all of this. Did she consent? Did she not consent? Did she have the capacity to consent? Did she not have the capacity to consent? We have varied judgments of people saying if she has chosen of her own free will, she can consent. And then we have great judgment even by the Federal Shariat Court saying that if this girl is underage, did not have access to independent counsel, we cannot grant it its consent. And there's no consistency in all of this approach. We have different forms of identifying what is the age of the victim. The age of the victim, is she 13, 14, 18, 21? Because that, of course, changes it all as well. We have ways that we have cases such as the Dua Zehra case where the court rejected Nadra documentation, which we did have. We have age ossification tests, and what the most horrific part is the majority of the cases where the trial courts for marriage simply look at her self-professed age in a conversion document, which is signed by one person sitting somewhere in the court or somewhere else. And that is the proof of age that is used. So where the problems lie in this is that there's an inconsistency of approach to that. So we're not looking at कि conversion के अंदर, can you even convert? Do you have the capacity to convert? Do you know what you're converting to? Do you understand the implications of it? Do you understand the implications of marriage, childbirth, and all of the myriad of issues that come after that? But where we look, and I think where we go the most problematic for us, is the concept of force itself. अगर हम कानून में जाएं, there's a very simple concept of force. Physical violence or threat of violence that the victim feels that it is likely that they will be harmed. So when we take the cases to court, and Luke will be talking about this in greater detail in the panel discussion, but when we go there, they say, where was the force? She left the home of her choice. She went out of her choice. She may or may not have been dating him. She's agreed to it. She's sitting in front of us and saying, yes, I consented to all of this. Who are we to take away her choice? There was no force, there was no intimidation. We can show a history of all of this, etc. But the reality is, the majority of cases have no force used at all. And in fact, what they have is an absence of consent. And how is the absence of consent taken? How is consent vitiated or taken away? Through four different types, overarching theme, we try to give them some labels, is four overarching types. False promises and deception. Because we have to understand कि आपकी context and situationality in बच्चों की क्या है और कहाँ से है. Where are they, who are they, and what are the vulnerabilities that they face? They are given false promises and deception. We'll give you a better life, you'll have more, you'll be able to do this. The cases that we talk about, which comes down to manipulation with economic incentive, they left because they were offered biryani. They got into the car because somebody offered them a good meal. Somebody offered to take a child out for ice cream. Somebody had spent years taking this girl, a 40-plus man with a 9-year-old girl, who later, 11, 12, now she's almost in her late teens, took her for treats and sweets, and then one day took her to the court instead of the ice cream to marry her off. We have actual coercion and emotional manipulation, where family members in some cases have been involved, who are married to Muslims, who then say, you have to do this. They are told, if you go back, your entire communities will be killed. You have accepted Islam. If you go back, the retribution will be to your community and everyone will die. These are the kind of threats that are used, not your force, no guns, not necessarily. And then they're isolated. And this is the biggest thing. We talk about concepts about Stockholm Syndrome. We talk about the concepts of isolation. If you leave a child or even an adult without any access to independent voices, an independent way to get out. Can you really call that consent? And we have Justice Zab here from the Federal Sheriff Court, because the Federal Sheriff Court's judgment says no. If she does not have access to independent counsel, you cannot consider that consent. So what are the main drivers of forced conversion or through marriage? There's two ways. We divided them into two forms. One is the motivations of the perpetrators, where we talk about the legal, social, and moral impunity. We have 6 subheadings, but rather than going into the detailed subheadings, I will just talk about them, the impact, basically. There is an absence of real consequences. Majority of cases, there have been acquittals. या cases abhi tak chal rahe hain 5, 10, 15 years later. Now, anyone who is motivated to do any kind of crime knows that there is little to no chance of retribution against them. So what is there to stop them? Without a specific section on forced conversion through marriage, this is where a massive problem comes in. And the legal impunity emboldens them. And why do they do it? There is a group of people who are taught, who genuinely believe that it is their duty as Muslims to convert another person to Islam. And even if we leave aside forced conversions, I mean, I've heard cases, people from my own friends and communities where somebody converted to be able to marry a Muslim girl, and they said, he's going to go straight to Jannah. She's going to go straight to Jannah because she has converted someone to Islam. The mindset that is placed into normal community, and particularly those who are part of some more of the more conservative, more right-wing groups, are constantly told that there is merit in you converting someone. So many believe it is the ideological duty to do so. And then we have a negative role of the media. Now, while media is a mixed thing, we have some great media, but there's also a massive role in the media that plays, which converts these cases, the way the reporting is done, it's very insensitive. It talks about conversion as a right, as a choice, as a free will choice. If you ever read a lot of the media reports, you'll say, the girl has consented, she left of her own choice, she's in love, it's a glorification. Abduction, grooming, pedophilia, rape, sexual abuse of young girls. And when you glorify something, anyone who is so inclined will go forth with it as well. Furthermore, then there's the sexual side of it. There's one which is ideologically motivated, and then we have the one which is basically sexual grooming. We have many, many cases and the examples, and I urge you, this is not enough time to talk about it. There are people who are working on the ground. We have all the panelists discuss the cases with them. You have cases where they have spent months and years grooming people or children to be exploited and taken away at a later stage. I gave the example of the man who took her for sweets and ultimately abducted and kidnapped her, married her, and impregnated her as well. So there's targeted grooming. It's not this happened. These victims are chosen. These victims are identified because of their situation and their vulnerability. Many of these groups are linked with trafficking and prostitution and sexual slavery as well. So in many cases, it's not even individual, it's linked to a larger crime organization. There's sexual dominance and control. There's a question that it's a very normative behavior that we see in Pakistan, even in sexual violence cases, but more so because of the legal impunity in such cases. And most importantly, they use religion as a guise. So where we have many people saying, the religious duty and all, religion is used as an excuse to cover actual sexual violence. And why these victims? I keep talking about why. The children, first of all. Children have a vulnerability because of their lack. So we have these subheadings, but I'll go into the details. Children are easy to manipulate. They believe whatever they are told. They believe somebody elder who's coming and saying something to them. They meaningfully cannot give consent. They're the easiest victims and targets because they know that at some point that exploitation is going to make it easier for them in the future. Adolescents, because a lot of the cases we see are girls between the ages of 11 and 16, there's a natural risk-taking tendency where it comes to adolescents who want to break the rules. Many of them believe that, it's a relationship. They believe they know it all. I'm dealing with one in my house, so I can personally vouch for where they think everything they know better than all of us. But this is where the exploitation comes in. Online and social media and digital media has just made it easier. But where these girls are particularly targeted is giving them what is the greed? I've forgotten the English word for it, of course, at this time. But basically trying to convince them to come out, we'll give you this. There are cases where the girls left home for a mobile phone because they couldn't afford a mobile phone. There are cases where they have just been drawn out through that exploitation and just kind of giving them incentives to come out. And largely because of the economic vulnerability. This is a fact where, unfortunately, religious minority communities in Pakistan, a large portion of them live below the poverty line. They are suffering. Girls in particular, where it comes in women and girls in patriarchal society, girls in particular suffer. The fact is, if you have no economic incentives, there's challenges in getting education. Many of the religious minority groups prefer to keep their children within a certain groups, within a certain setting, because of the threat from the outside world, the Muslim world, or the larger Pakistani civilization, threats from harassment, threats of violence, threats of them even falling in love and potentially marrying someone out of their community. There is a natural patriarchal element of control even within that. So girls from religious minority communities face a triple discrimination. They face the discrimination of being a woman and all of its challenges in a patriarchal world. They face the discrimination of being religious minorities in a world where they're constantly discriminated on the basis of their religion, and then economic marginalization. And their vulnerability is exactly what is exploited. Additionally, then we have the social structures. We don't need to go over I won't go over this in detail, but the reality is we have a majority and minority complex. When we are deliberating in courts or when we're deliberating about policies, we often exclude the right. We get told, Constitution mein to pura haq hai. They have complete right of freedom of religion. But the reality is our social structure and setup do not allow that. There is a powerful group and there's a group that is not as powerful. And the psychology of the non-powerful group allows a powerful group to dominate, to exploit, and use this vulnerability to their advantage. We have social cultural attitudes normalizing, as I said, even in the media, but even in our society. We have certain normalization. Okay, she got converted, but being a Muslim is a good thing. We've had cases from the shelter homes where people are saying to the girls, saying, well, you converted to Islam, and Islam is a better religion, so it's not so bad. But we've normalized this kind of acceptance as well. The failure to regulate conversion means that it is easy to convert, frankly speaking. We have no certification, proper form of certification. We have no standards. We have no rules. We have no way of checking whether the conversion was real. This allows a big gray area and a big loophole for us to do this. There have been massive challenges to political will. The governments at various points, the commissions, the departments have at various points raised these issues. And in Sindh, for example, they did try to pass a law on forced conversion, and the members of the committee who approved it, the standing committee, got individual death threats. So there is challenges that we're facing from the political side as well. And then, as I said earlier on, our focus has been on more on response rather than prevention. So we have to focus more on preventing these rather than responding to the one-off cases or two-off cases that we hear of, because there are many we never hear of. So what is the impact? We have the impact on the victim or survivor, the psychological trauma, victim blaming sexual abuse. There's a social ostracization from the larger community as well as her community. The physical health angle, the early pregnancies, the stigmatization, the isolation from the family. From Pakistani society, we see the challenges of rule of law, human rights violations, and intercommunal tensions, and in particular to the community itself. It affects the community's solidarity, cultural heritage. It continues with a sense of discrimination and the fear of harm and death, and particularly to the girls, which also results in them further trying to protect and isolate the girls. And lastly, it really impacts the demographic shift, which we see regularly through the population census of Pakistan. So key recommendations, just ending with that, the report recommends the formal processes and mechanisms required for conversion so that there's not a disparate, I choose to do this today and I choose to do this tomorrow, a proper functioning certification of conversion. We have to increase the capacity of criminal justice sector actors in order to respond to this, recognizing the power dynamics, recognizing the vulnerabilities, not just focusing on physical force. We do have to look, I believe we do have to look at law reform to add in a specific section on this. And most importantly, we have to look at addressing the socioeconomic situations of the religious minority community. Until there's true empowerment, that power balance will never shift, and this will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malia, for that comprehensive presentation. Building on that evidence, we now move on to the screening of our documentary titled A Stolen Choice. I will invite Ms. Aisha Gazdar to join us on the stage and talk a little bit about her work and the making of the documentary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to be really brief because I think the work that you will see. Okay, thank you. I'm going to be very brief because the work that you will see will speak for itself. And the fact that we made this film was to complement the report. And I'll just read out what I wrote actually. So this film is a little glimpse into a very serious issue in Pakistan, which deeply impacts the young and the vulnerable. It only scratches the surface, but I hope that this little attempt, if it leaves an impression or even stirs anger at the injustice that so many Pakistanis face, it would have served its purpose. I would just like to thank you to the Nchr and Legal Aid Society for this opportunity to work on a very challenging but very important issue. Most importantly, I want to thank the 2 young survivors who you will see now, who braved the camera. You can tell that even after a couple of years from the ordeal that they faced and they were giving the interview, how much their life has changed, and not for the better at all. I mean, how impacted they are. They can't go back to their families. So everything for them has changed. And the lived reality which Haya was talking about, we actually faced it while we were doing the film. And I just feel more work on these issues keep happening. So I'm going to end there, and I hope you the film does create the awareness that we wanted it to. Thank you.
किसी जगह पे लेके गए जहाँ पे मुझे बोला कि ये कोर्ट है, और जब मुझे घर से लेके जा रहे थे तो मुझे बोला अगर तुमने ये बात वहाँ पे किसी को बताई, किसी से बात की, तो जो मेरा छोटा भाई मेरे साथ किया था उसे हम मार देंगे।
पाकिस्तान एक ऐसा मुल्क है जहाँ मुख्तलिफ लसानी और मजहबी बरादरियाँ आबाद हैं। बड़े सगीर के मुसलमानों के लिए बनने वाले इस मुल्क के बानियों ने अपने नजरिए के तहत मुल्क में रहने वाली मजहबी अक़ीदतों को भी अपने अक़ायद के तहत जिंदगी गुजारने को यकीनी बनाया। इसके बावजूद पिछले कई सालों से मजहबी अक़ीदतें जुल्म और ज़्यादती का शिकार हैं। गैर मुस्लिम लड़कियां माशरे में और भी ज़्यादा गैर महफूज हैं।
तमाम मिनॉरिटीज़ की लड़कियों को ये सुनना पड़ता है कि आप मुसलमान क्यों नहीं हो जाते, आप कलमा क्यों नहीं पढ़ लेते। और मुझे पहली बार कलमा पढ़ाया गया था जब मैं 3 क्लास में थी या 4 क्लास में थी।
एक और संगीन मसला जबरी तब्दीली मजहब और कम उम्र की शादियां हैं, जिनके नतीजे में होने वाले जिस्मानी और नफ्सियाती असरात का अंदाज़ा रोमा और सारा की कहानी से बखूबी लगाया जा सकता है।
जब मैं 12 साल की थी तब मैं पंजाब से आई थी अपने कज़न की शादी में। मेरी खाला ने काफ़ी साल पहले एक मुस्लिम से शादी कर ली थी। तो मेरी खाला के साथ मेरा बहुत प्यार था। हमारा ऊपर नीचे का घर था, नीचे खाला रहती थी, ऊपर हम रहते थे। तो खाला ने बोला कि जो खालू के भाई हैं उनसे तुम्हारी शादी करनी है। तो पहले मुझे लगा मजाक कर रही हैं, तो खाला ने मुझसे मेरा भाई छीन लिया और मैं शोर कर रही थी और मैं बोल रही थी मैं तो अभी बहुत छोटी हूँ, तो मैं तो इससे शादी नहीं करूँगी। तो मुझे एक कमरे में बंद कर दिया। फिर खालू के जो भाई थे वो आए, उन्होंने मेरे साथ ज़बरदस्ती की। और वो लड़का नहीं था, वो मेरे पापा की उम्र का होगा, ये 45 साल का था। वो मेरे खालू से बड़ा था, मेरे खालू से छोटे थे। दूसरे दिन मुझे किसी जगह पे लेके गए जहाँ पे मुझे बोला कि ये कोर्ट है, और जब मुझे घर से लेके जा रहे थे तो मुझे बोला अगर तुमने ये बात वहाँ पे किसी को बताई या किसी से बात की, तो जो मेरा छोटा भाई मेरे साथ किया था उसे हम मार देंगे। वहाँ पे उन एक कमरा था जिसमें 2 आदमी बैठे हुए थे, तो उनसे उन्होंने बोला कि उन दोनों की शादी करनी है। तो उन्होंने बोला ये लड़की कितने साल की है, तो मेरी खाला ने बोला कि ये 18 साल की है। उसके बाद मैंने बोला नहीं मैं 18 साल की नहीं हूँ, मैं तो 12 साल की हूँ, पर मुझे कपड़े से बाहर भेज दिया।
इस गैर कानूनी शादी के 7 रोज बाद रोमा उस आदमी के चुंगल से फरार तो हुई, लेकिन अभी तक वो पुरअमन जिंदगी गुजारने से महरूम है।
मैं आज तक क्यों जाती हूँ कोर्ट में, वही बातें सारी रिपीट करनी पड़ती हैं, वही सब कुछ कहना पड़ता है, और ये मेरे लिए बिल्कुल आसान है। मैं चाहती हूँ, मेरे पापा की तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, मैं कुछ कर भी नहीं सकती, उनसे मिल भी नहीं सकती हूँ, बस सोचती हूँ कि क्या करूँ।
पाकिस्तान में जबरी तब्दीली मजहब से मुतालिक ताहाल कोई कानून नहीं है, लेकिन अगर मौजूदा कवानीन पर सख्ती से अमल दरामद कराया जाए तो इन जराइम को रोका जा सकता है।
375 पीपीसी रेप को डिफाइन करता है, जो कि ये डिफाइन करता है कि 16 साल से कम उम्र बच्ची के साथ विद और विदाउट हर कंसेंट किसी भी किस्म का सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स किया जाए तो दैट इज टैंटामाउंट टू स्टैट्यूटरी रेप। हमारे पाकिस्तान पीनल कोड के अंदर एक न्यू सेक्शन इंट्रोड्यूस हो गया है 377A, जो कि कहता है कि 18 साल से कम उम्र लड़के या लड़की के साथ किसी भी किस्म का सेक्सुअली एक्सप्लिसिट कंडक्ट किया जाए, वो इवन आप किसी बच्चे को फॉन्डल करने की कोशिश करें, उसे किस करने की कोशिश करें, दैट इज टैंटामाउंट टू सेक्सुअल अब्यूज और उसकी सजा।
ये जराइम ज्यादातर बहकावे या एंटाइसमेंट के जरिए होते हैं।
तो वो शख्स जो था, आई थिंक उसकी एज थी 42, और उस शख्स मतलब उसने मुझे लालच दी चीज़ों की कि आप मेरे साथ आओ तो मैं आपको चीज़ें खिलाता हूँ। मुझे सिटी कोर्ट में लेकर गया। सिटी कोर्ट में ले जाने के बाद उसने मुझे बुर्का दिया पहनने के लिए, उसके बाद वो मुझे दादी के पास लेकर गया।
रोमा और सारा जैसी और भी सैकड़ों लड़कियां हैं जो इस कर्ब से गुजर रही हैं।
स्टेटमेंट आ गया कि शी इज कन्वर्टेड इन इस्लाम, और सिर्फ लड़कियां ही होती हैं, टीनेजर होती हैं, मर्द नहीं होते, कल्पना नहीं होती, और कभी भी बहन करके कन्वर्ट नहीं किया जाता। ठीक है ना, ये भी तो रिश्ते हैं ना, नेचुरल रिश्ते, उसमें से बीवी बन के ही होती है, और वो भी टीनेजर।
जब हम बात करते हैं कंसेंट की, यानी कि मर्जी की, एक लिमिटेड सोच हमारी होती है कि कंसेंट जब किसी से लिया जाता है वो फोर्स के बगैर लिया जाता है। जब हम अल्फाज फोर्स इस्तेमाल करते हैं हम सोचते हैं फिजिकल वायलेंस, फिजिकल थ्रेट, कि किसी को अबडक्ट किया, किसी को किडनैप किया, लेकिन जो असलियत है, जो केसेस हमारे पास आते हैं, कभी अलग कहानी होती है। बच्चियों के साथ खास तौर पर जो लड़कियां इकोनॉमिकली मार्जिनलाइज्ड कम्युनिटी से होती हैं, और खास तौर पर अगर हम रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज की गर्ल्स देखते हैं, उनको फोर्स से नहीं निकाला जाता, उनको इंटाइसमेंट से।
जरूरत इस बात की है कि माशरे में रजामंदी के तस्वुर को उजागर किया जाए।
That is what we try to teach young people as well, to understand when you can make these kinds of decisions and that you have a choice, right? And so that is actually consent, to understand that I have a choice and I can say no if I feel the need to say no.
इन मुतासिरा बच्चों को महफूज बनाने के लिए अहम ये है कि पुलिस और अदलिया की तरबियत और जहन साजी की जाए।
हम चाहते हैं कि हमारे जो डिपार्टमेंट है उसमें सेंसिटिविटी ज़्यादा हो, जेंडर सेंसिटिविटी हो, रिलीजियस सेंसिटिविटी हो, वो इंक्लूसिविटी इंश्योर करने के लिए हम कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग करवाएं, ताकि जो हमारे पास फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर्स हैं, जो फ्रंट डेस्क ऑफिसर्स हैं, वो उस एम्पैथी के साथ जो है फैसिलिटेट कर पाएं कंप्लेनेंट्स को।
लीगल एड सोसाइटी और नेशनल कमीशन फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स की जानिब से एक तहकीकी रिपोर्ट ने इस संगीन मसले के हल के लिए अहम सिफारिशात पेश की हैं।
पाकिस्तान की जो आइन है, जो उसमें हमें आज़ादी मिली है ना, अगर वो भी हमें आधी भी मिल जाए तो हमारे लिए पाकिस्तान जन्नत बन जाए।
बेटियां जो सबकी सांझी हैं, आए हम सब मिलकर एक महफूज माहौल बनाएं
और हौसला शिकनी करें उन अनासिर और सोच की जिनकी वजह से हमारी बेटियों के ख्वाब कहीं तारीकियों में खो जाते हैं।
These 9 minutes were These 9 minutes were moving and impactful. Thank you to the director for letting us share the documentary and screen it today. Next, we're going to move on to a panel discussion, which is titled Empowering Choices in Upholding Justice. The panel discussion will be moderated by Ms. Meliha Zia Lari and will feature a diverse set of experts who have been at the forefront of the struggle. I'm requesting the speakers that as I introduce you, you can make your way to the stage. I would like to welcome Dr. Sijal Shafiq, who is a dedicated activist and organizer of both the Aurat March and the Minority Rights March. She also runs a shelter providing protection and support to young girls who are survivors of forced conversions and underage marriages. Next, I would like to invite Guru Sukh Devji, who serves on the Minority Advisory Committee in Rahim Yar Khan. He is also chairman of the Minority Wing of the National Peace Force Committee for Interfaith Harmony. As a respected community leader, he has long worked to promote minority rights and representation and interfaith harmony. Next is Mr. Luke Victor, who is supporting minority rights through a firm providing pro bono legal services to survivors of underage marriage. He also serves on the board of a Christian shelter home, bringing legal insight and on-ground experience to address the gaps in protection and justice. Lastly, I would like to invite the esteemed Pastor Ghazala, the first registered woman pastor and apologist in Pakistan, who is also a founding member of the Aurat March and Minority Rights March. She is widely known for her outspoken advocacy for minority rights, interfaith dialogue, and support for victims of forced conversions. Lastly, I would also like to invite SSP Beenish Fatma, who is currently serving as Regional Officer at the Crime Control Department in Rawalpindi, an International Association of Chiefs of Police 40 Under 40 awardee. She has contributed to policy development and research on improving accessibility of law enforcement and advancing gender inclusivity within the police. Thank you. Melia? Thank you. We can meet the
Thank you so much. बहुत शुक्रिया बहुत शुक्रिया आप सबका आने का as well. Shakti, आपने देखी होगी ये documentary shortly before this as well. But these are the people who are at the forefront of dealing with the on-ground cases as well. So Guru साहब, मैं आपसे शुरू करना चाहूँगी. हमने ये report में present किया है, हमने अभी documentary में भी देखी थी ये बात कि cases हमारे हो रही हैं. आपकी राय है कि क्यों होते हैं? Why are these girls being targeted? कि पाकिस्तान के माशरे के अंदर specifically इन लड़कियों को क्यों target किया जाता है in cases of forced conversion?
शुक्रिया की मेहरबानी. मेरा नाम गुरु सुखदेव जी और हिंदू कम्युनिटी में लीडर रहीम यार खान से मेरा रब्ता रहता हूँ. तो असल में तो मैं शुक्रगुजार हूँ कि इस तरह के प्रोग्राम हमारे होने चाहिए और आज इनसे हम फ़ायदा उठाते हैं और हमारे लिए अच्छा भी होगा। जिस तरह बात हुई है तब्दीली मज़हब की, तो एक तो मसला ये है कि मुल्क की मसला है, जिसकी आबादी ज़्यादा है, अक्सरियत है, थोड़ी है, तो अक़लीती कहलाती है, जहाँ भी है। लेकिन मैं ख़ासकर बात करता हूँ हमारे अक़लीतियों की या ख़ासकर हिंदू बिरादरी की। तो हिंदू बिरादरी में कुछ फ़र्क ये है कि मजदूर लोग भी हैं, तबका ज़्यादा है, और इसलिए थोड़ा सा ये मसला होता है, क्योंकि बैंक मजदूरी करते हैं, एक दूसरे के घर जाते हैं, तो उनको विरगलाया जाता है और विरगला कर कुछ ले जाते हैं, फिर उनको तरबियत देते हैं इस्लामी। तो मैं ये नहीं कहता कि धर्म सब अच्छे हैं, और इस्लाम तो वैसे भी अमन का गहवारा है, तो अमन ना होता तो लोग इतना मुल्क ना बढ़ते। तो इसलिए हमें यहाँ रहते हुए अमन के एक मुल्क में, अगर जो देखा जाए तो पाकिस्तान में भी हमारे बड़ों का हाथ है, जिस तरह MP सिन्हा साहब है, उसके बाद जोगिंद्रनाथ मंडल और भी बिरादरी है, इनका हिस्सा है। उसके बाद हमारे परचम में भी हमारा हिस्सा है सफ़ेद। तो मैं ये कहता हूँ यहाँ ऐसा मुल्क हमारा प्यारा, इसमें हम अक़लीतियों को ज़रा दूसरी नज़र से देखा जाता है, और ये ख़ास बात इस पर आती है कि अपने आप को अच्छा समझना, दूसरे को नीचा समझना। सब इंसान है और ईश्वर की माला की छत के नीचे रहते हैं। तो जिस तरह हमारा पूरा हुकूक है पाकिस्तान में, दूसरे मुल्क में है या नहीं मुझे नहीं, मैं अपने मुल्क की बात करूँगा। तो इसमें 2-3 किस्म की हमारे लिए बहुत मुश्किलात होती हैं। एक तो तब्दीली मसलब, बच्चे होते हैं छोटे छोटे 12-13 साल के बच्चे होते हैं, तो उनको ले जाकर उनको ऐसी तरीक़ाकार बताते हैं कि आप इस्लाम की तरफ आ जाए। इस्लाम की तरफ बेशक जाएँ, हमारी बिरादरी में बहुत सारी जाती हैं, हमें कुछ सिखा नहीं है। तो हमें अमन से रहने के लिए हमें क्या करना है कि हमें बच्चा, एक हमारी बच्ची अगर कोई ले जाए तो उनकी माँ के लिए, बहन भाइयों के लिए कितना दुख की बात है। तो ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए। अगर अपनी मर्ज़ी से जो पूरा ख़ानदान जा रहा था, नहीं है, एक तो मसला है, क्योंकि आनंद सुख रहना है तो हमें इन चीज़ से बचना है और बचाना भी है। और उसके बाद मैं ये भी कहना चाहता हूँ, जिस तरह हमारे बड़ों ने ये मुल्क बनाया, तो इसमें एक नफ़रत का सिलसिला भी जारी है, नफ़रत का। तो ऐसे गरीब तबके जो हैं, मैं जो आज बात कर रहा हूँ अपनी दिल की कर रहा हूँ, कि गरीब तबके जब शहरों में या कहीं जाएंगे तो बताएंगे मैं भी गैर मुसलमान हूँ या हिंदू हूँ, तो आपके लिए बर्तन भी नहीं है, मेरे लिए बर्तन भी नहीं है, इधर बैठे हैं सब अच्छे हैं। एक आदमी जाकर बाहर का 10-10 लोगों को बताए तो ये अमन हो गया, और अमन होना चाहिए। कोई भी धर्म गलत नहीं समझाता, बेशक हिंदू, सिख, बुद्धिस्ट हो और क्रिश्चियन भाई हो, सब अमन के ही पैगाम है। तो हमें अमन से रहना है, तो हम भी शांति सुख से रहें। और पाकिस्तान हमारा मुल्क प्यारा, लोगों के मुल्कों में ऐसा हो कि जैसे अमन का गहवारा लोग तारीफ करें कि पाकिस्तान बहुत अच्छा है। और मैं भी कहता हूँ, अगर हम पाकिस्तान में रहते नहीं हैं, हम कदीमी हैं, एक तरफ से नहीं कि पाकिस्तान से आए हैं महाजर बनकर, लेकिन नहीं, हम कदीमी यहीं की है, हिंदू खिते में दरमियान में रहने वाले। तो जब मुल्क की तब्दील होती है, इसमें जब ये बातें आएंगी तो ये बातें होंगी, तो एक तो मुश्किलात है, और होटलों पर जाना तो वो बड़ी मुश्किलात है। दूसरी तो बातें ये जैसे भी है, तो इस तरह के प्रोग्राम हमारे छोटे छोटे दूसरे इलाकों में, देही अपने देहातों में भी होने चाहिए, तो उन लोगों को भी पता लगे। दूसरा जो है तौहीन रसालत, मैं आपके दिल से कहता हूँ, मैं सब धर्मों का दास हूँ, और इस्लाम तो वैसे भी अमन का गहवारा है, अमन है, भाईचारा है। लेकिन हम लोग जो हैं हिंदुओं मुस्लिम भाइयों के दरगाहों पर जाते हैं, चढ़ावे भी देते हैं, देख भी देते हैं। मैं आपको ये सही बताता हूँ, रास्ते में जाए ना और मस्जिद या दरबार आ जाए तो तो उनको में हम जूती उतार के एक पास रखते हैं, तरफ रखते हैं और उनको बंदगी सजदा करके फिर जाते हैं। हम तो इस तरह के लोग हैं, लेकिन ये बात जो आएगी फिर हमारे लिए बहुत मुश्किल हो जाती है। फिर मेहरबानी इनको तरीक़ेकार से चलाना चाहिए। और इसमें अगर तो इनकी मैं बात करूँ तो मुसलमान कभी गैर मुसलमान कभी भी कुछ इस तरह की घिनौनी हरकत नहीं करेगा। मैं कहता हूँ जितना मुसलमान भाई अपने धर्म को मानते हैं उनसे ज़्यादा हम मानते हैं। हमारी अगर धार्मिक चीज़ों में देखा जाए तो रामायण में देखोगे तो अमन की बात आएगी, श्रीमद् भागवत गीता में देखो तो अमन की बात आएगी। तो बराए मेहरबानी ऐसा तरीकाकार होना चाहिए जो छोटी बच्चों को, जब हम कहते हैं कि 18 साल की लड़की और जब 18 साल से 12, 13, 14 साल की शादी भी हो जाए, कानून 18 साल का है, उधर देखो और इधर फिर कानून पे देखो, तो ये नहीं होना चाहिए और इनको रोकना चाहिए। और हमारे लड़के अगर मुसलमान हो जाए तो बेचारा भटकते ही रहते हैं, तीसरा दिन या 10वां दिन या 2 साल के बाद भी उनकी शादी होती नहीं, दूसरी तरफ उधर उधर घूमते रहते हैं।
टॉलरेंस की बात कर रहे हैं कि the fact कि ये नॉर्मेटिव नहीं है कि ये कुछ लोगों का ज़्यादा काम होता है। उससे जब मैं पैटर्न बता रहा है तो आस्क यू क्वेश्चन खास तौर पर कि यू कैन एट द फोरफ्रंट कि आपको ये सिर्फ केसेस देखे नहीं है, यू कैन इन्वॉल्व इन द रेस्क्यू आइडेंटिफिकेशन के आपके पास फैमिलीज आती हैं, यू कैन एट द पॉइंट ऑफ रेस्क्यूइंग द गर्ल यू कैन इन्वॉल्व एक हमें पता है कि क्यों होता है, व्हाट आर द रिस्क्स एंड चैलेंजेस एक तो लड़कियों के लिए एज वेल उनके खानदान के लिए एज वेल लेकिन डिफेंडर्स के लिए। Can you talk a little bit about the actual rescue itself and the problems that we deal with afterwards?
I have been lucky and fortunate that we have rescued almost more than 22 girls, Hindu, Sikh, 2 Muslim girls, and rest were the 80 girls or the Christian girls. So it's not only that you have to rescue the girl or recover the girl from the abductors, but you have to relocate or protect the families also. I will later on share the story of the 2 girls which were shown. The risk, the girl who was talking on the video, she's also from our shelter. So when we rescued her, and she's now a very strong Christian again, and she's studying very well, and she's doing so good. When Zahra Fatma case was in the court, and judges gave order that the identification of the girl should not be shown, and the media was stopped. And the backlash what I was facing, not only at that time, but my church, I live on the Trinity Church compound, which is the main cathedral and in the red zone area. I'm living for last 30 years on that compound. And 3 consecutive videos were shown on the social media where my church was shown, where I was shown, and I was connected with Jabran Nasir because he was the advocate in this girl's case. So they said that they not only threatened me, and they said that we are carrying some sort of organization which is taking Muslim girls, whereas this girl was Christian. I will name her Arzu Raja. This is a very, very famous case of forced conversion and under a marriage here. So they showed her face, they showed my face, they showed my church. So I had to go and meet several times to the Press Club president, secretary, and everybody because they were threatening directly to the church also. Not only my life, my children, but the whole church was at risk. And the last year, what they did in 2024, my drivers' pictures were on the social media. The girls of these forced conversion who are staying in my shelter. This is a private shelter with our family and friends. We are running this shelter. So the girls of this shelter were shown on the social myself, my husband, and then I was declared as Kadyani also. And then even the last year, they put on the walls of my church, where I'm just residing. There are so many other people are residing there. There's a big church. TLP people came and put that ultimatum for 24 hours, and they said, like, they were trying to target us. Because we made a video of these girls for the Minority Rights March, where they can speak about their ordeal and sufferings and the persecution. So that made angry to the religious extremists. So many times we have been targeted, and I say I always carry death on my head many times. And this is not an easy thing, but we have to save the families, we have to save ourselves. And then when this, my church was shown and the threats were extended to the church also, then we have to write to Pendra and all the authorities to get those videos removed. And finally, when Pendra helped us to remove those videos from the social media, but one day, literally, I went to the press club, I sat there, I said, please call that man, I won't name him here now. I said, call him, he is giving me 3 days that he will kill me. I'm here, tell him, come and he can directly kill me, don't threaten my church. That was the situation we faced. And this is terrible that just protecting small girls, giving them their life back to them, their faith back to them, it becomes a life-threatening situation for the activists also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. I think that's a harsh reality we have to face as well. You know, there are behind PB as well. Those cake campaign issues out there. And not just to mention that putting the girls' faces on social media puts them in danger as well in the long run. Because we all know if it's on social media, it's hard to take it down. Like I said, and I'm having a conversation we were having earlier on, okay? Because you work with the girls and they reside in your shelter and you're looking after them, okay? Deviate from our previously questions a little bit. You were talking about the case of the girls who keep constantly, what is the trauma? What are the trauma that we don't hear about? They think the additional trauma, if they're sent back, what happens, for clarification, very often when the girl is rescued and taken to court, the question is, where does she go? Where do you place it during the care of the child? So आपके पास 3 options होते हैं यार, या तो she goes back to her family, which is her parents, or she's sent out with the purported husband, or she's sent to a shelter. So within this scenario, can you talk a little bit about the risk to the girl with each one of these scenarios, but also the trauma that they face as a result of all of this?
Thank you, Manina. So, in cases when the girls are sent to the state shelter, जो कि ज़्यादातर majority cases हैं, this is what we see that the court orders because they don't want to send with the parents, they don't want to send with the abductor, so they send them to the state shelter.
constantly for 2 years. And it took 3 years before she was able to talk in the presence of men or boys. She used to just stop talking and anytime there was a man or a boy in the room. And so over the past 6 years, she's been having these stomach aches, like consistent stomach pains, and we have had every imaginable test done repeatedly over and over again. And the doctors cannot find any actual physical cause, like what is causing this pain. And this is a trauma that has been stored and is manifesting as actual physical pain. There is no medical reason for the pain. So this is one. It's been 6 years and she still suffers from that stomach pain, and painkillers don't work on it. Painkillers don't work on it, and it cannot be diagnosed. No ultrasound, no tests have shown that there's anything physically wrong. But that trauma that manifests in the form of pain, and that is the other girl who was. She also gave birth to a child when she was recovered, and she was raped by multiple men when she was there. So even she used to get fever, like 104, 103 fever, and we used to rush her to the hospital. This fever did not respond to any medications. And we used to rush her to the hospital, and the doctors used to say that there is no probable cause for this fever. It's unexplainable. There was no infection in her body, but she used to constantly have this fever episodes, and this was her trauma manifesting in that way. So these are things that are not talked about, but these are also there.
Because it's not just about the immediate recovery, there's so much more than the continued vulnerability and susceptibility to violence. Look, Nchr, I'll come to you because आपके पास खासा figure out in the justice system. So, look, can you talk a little bit about each of these girls? I mean, you talked about the recovery, the risks to them and the defenders and the families, and then the trauma that they continue. Can you tell us a little bit about when you actually get a case of forced conversion? We haven't even come to the point about prevention. What are the challenges that they face to the entire system from the point of even being able to report a case?
See, अगर वो जो बैरिस्टर हया ने एक नज़म के कुछ फरमान पढ़े थे, हशाक पे उल्लू बैठा है तो गुलिस्तान का क्या हाल होगा। Unfortunately, हमारा जो criminal justice sector है, with the utmost respect and deference, पूरा in short बुरा हाल है। और देखें, मैं इसको break down summarize in easy language layman terms करने की कोशिश करूँगा। एक माँ बाप चाहते हैं आने के ऊपर कि हमारी औलाद 14-15 साल की बच्ची, 13 साल की बच्ची, पर हमारे पास एक केस आया जिसमें 11 साल की बच्ची थी, यंगेस्ट चाइल्ड का केस डील किया हमने। कि वो तड़पते हुए माँ बाप की एकदम से जो नन्ही मुन्नी हमारी जान है वो गायब हो चुकी है। वी डोंट नो कि वो एकदम से कहाँ गई, आज सुबह स्कूल गई थी, अभी थोड़ी देर पहले कहीं बाहर कोई दुकान से चीज़ लेने गई थी, और इतनी देर हो गई हमारे नहीं, हम क्या करें, कब से ढूंढ रहे हैं, भागते भागते जाते हैं कि जी एक ही रास्ता है जहाँ से हमें कोई रिलीफ मिल सकती है, वो है पुलिस स्टेशन। और जब पुलिस स्टेशन पर जाते हैं तो पुलिस स्टेशन वाले पहले तो कहते हैं कि अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हो सकता है कि वो किसी के साथ भाग के शादी हो गई। और ये मैं वर्बटम कोट कर रहा हूँ कि एक हाई रैंकिंग पुलिस ऑफिसर इस एंटायर ऐसी एक सिनेरियो के अंदर जब एक बाप डरता हुआ तरसता हुआ कि जी कोई मेरी मदद कर दे, मेरी 13 साल की बच्ची को रिकवर करके मुझे ये बता दें कि जिंदा भी है या मर गई, मुझे तो पता भी नहीं है तो गई कहाँ। तो उसको आगे रादर दैन ये भी पूछें कि भाई आपकी बेटी की नाम क्या है और एग्जैक्टली कंप्लेंट क्या है, पहले का मान जब अपने मुंह से निकाले कि देखें जी वो ऐसे केसेस के अंदर तो ये होता है कि वो बच्चियां अपनी मर्जी से किसी के साथ आती होंगी, तो आपको तो खुश होना चाहिए, अच्छी जगह उसकी शादी हो गई। और वो बाप शक्ल देख रहा है कि जी मुझे तो ये भी नहीं पता कि वो जिंदा है या शादी हो गई है, क्या हो गया, मैं तो आपसे सिर्फ ये रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ कि मेरी बच्ची को रिकवर करके ले आए। एंड दिस इज द रिस्पांस व्हिच ही गॉट। और ये कोई नीचे जो है छोटे लेवल के पुलिस ऑफिसर नहीं थे, ये AIG एडिशनल इंस्पेक्टर जनरल ऑफ पुलिस एक सूबे थे। जब इस तरीके के मामला होते हैं, हम जितने केसेस के अंदर भी मैं देखता हूँ कि जो पहले ही केस फाइल होता है वो एट दी पुलिस स्टेशन होता है। पुलिस FIR काटने में देर करती है, FIR काटती है तो बहुत वीक FIR काटती है। और जो हम बात कर रहे थे कि हम इस पर भी आगे डिटेल डिस्कशन भी करेंगे कि हम हमेशा चाहते हैं बच्ची को एक रिकवर करने वाला जो हमारा तरीकेकार होता है, ये इतना स्लो डाउन हो जाता है कि इट टेक्स मंथ्स, इट टेक्स कंसिडरेबल पीरियड ऑफ टाइम कि जब तक वो बच्ची रिकवर होकर आती है। इन मेनी बच्चियां जब अदालत के सामने पहली दफा आती हैं तो ये जो एक आप माजरा देखते हैं, फिनोमेना देखते हैं कि वो बच्ची कहती है कि नहीं जी मैं तो अपनी मर्जी से गई थी, और वो कहती है कि मैं खुश हूँ। ये इसलिए नहीं है कि वो इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट देकर बता रही है कि मैं खुश हूँ, बल्कि ये जो पैरेंट एलियनेशन सिंड्रोम, ये स्टॉकहोम सिंड्रोम है क्या, कि जो आपसे बुराई कर रहा है, जो आपके साथ ज्यादती कर रहा है, आपका माइंड कंडीशन हो जाता है स्लोली कि आप उसके खिलाफ नहीं जाएंगे, आप कंडीशन कर दिया जाता है कि आप उसके खिलाफ नहीं जाएंगे। और ये जो नन्ही मुन्नी जाने होती हैं टिल द टाइम दैट दे एंड बिफोर द मैजिस्ट्रेट, और अनफॉर्चुनेटली द मैजिस्ट्रेट्स डू नॉट एक्सरसाइज देयर ड्यू डिलिजेंस एज दे शुड, और वो बच्चियों की 164 को हक भी मान लेते हैं कि बच्ची अगर कल को कह दे कि जी मैं आसिफ अली जरदारी की औलाद हूँ, तो शायद उनको बिलावल की बहन मानना शुरू कर दिया जाएगा। 164 की एविडेंशियरी वैल्यू कोई नहीं है, but unfortunately magistrates rather than applying the existing legislative framework, जिसमें मैं जिक्र करूंगा कि फेडरल सतह पे जो अब 2025 की चाइल्ड मैरिज रेस्ट्रिक्शन एक्ट आ गई है, सिंध में हमारे पास डिटेल्ड मैकेनिज्म है इन द फॉर्म ऑफ द एक्ट 2013 एंड रूल्स 2016, जिसमें मैजिस्ट्रेट्स की प्राइमरी जिम्मेदारी है कि even on suspicion of a child marriage you have to act proactively, you have to act in a manner which is preventive, you have to secure the child. The primary concern is that you secure the child, not that the child is being brought by the very accused who is accused of abducting that child, and the accused is accompanying that child and bringing them before the magistrate, and the magistrate, instead of securing the child and removing them from the custody of that accused, वो उस बेसिस के ऊपर कि जी बच्ची ने हमारे सामने आके कह दिया कि जी मैं तो अपनी मर्जी से गई थी, मैं तो 19 साल की हूँ, कोई नागा की डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं देनी, कोई प्रोसिक्यूशन को नोटिस नहीं करना, कोई कंप्लेनेंट को नोटिस नहीं करना, और जाए जी आप इनको ले जाए साथ।
So this is, I mean, I think the big question is how much, the legal question that comes in here, the entire veracity of the case depends on the statement of the child without taking the psychological challenges and all of that. Can't be just hindrance. But before we move on, because I do want to wrap this up, and we have time for discussion, I think, towards the end of the program today. Of course, there's a lot of accusations always put against the police, and you know, to a certain extent, rightfully so. But you have been responsible for working with the gender police unit in Islamabad, and you were responsible for some of the transformative changes that were made in responding to gender cases in Islamabad. How can this be improved? What can you fix? Is there even a simple fix that we can do? What should we be doing in order to change exactly this kind of narrative or mindset that we see in the police, in the crime, straight prosecution at this point?
Thank you, Priya, and thank you everyone who want to be a part of this very uncomfortable discussion. It's not about throwing or hurling accusations. We are sitting here because we want to improve things, and the fact that you have drawn this amazing report, I've just read it, it's very comprehensive, and you have talked about how coercion is not just physical, but there are many ways to it. And secondly, one thought really stuck with me, how to talk about it's not one or two way jeopardy, rather it's a triple jeopardy, and that's how you need to look at it. Number one, that you are a girl child. Secondly, you are a girl child in a patriarchal society like ours. And lastly, you belong from a minority community. So there are many odds, and probably 99 out of 100 are against you. You only have to get lucky to find somebody like an organization or somebody who wants to put some sense into you. It is also a reality that the coercions that we are talking about, many of them, or may I say majority of them, are not physical coercions, and then to establish them becomes a great challenge. What do you do when a girl is standing in the police station shouting out loud, or standing in the room of a magistrate shouting out loud that I don't want to go with my parents, I'm at the threat of honor killing, or maybe my parents might cause me more harm than the person I want to be with. So, you know, there are many, many things and many facets to it that we need to cater for. And that is also a reality. In many cases I have seen that many a times a girl after a few months of marriage realizes that she hasn't made the right choice, or the reality dawns upon her, and she goes back to her parents, and then she falls the victim to honor killing. So there are many, many issues that we need to take care of, like you rightly Secondly, if it is fact, if you say that there is a religious conversion ongoing, so that is when we connect the person affected with victim support officers who are not police officers. They are people from general public. We have societies. We have NGOs working with us who will be providing us with victim support officers who will be talking to the victim, and they provide that neutral atmosphere, asking them the right questions. Are you under threat? Are you under duress? Did you do it willingly? Are you having second thoughts? All these sorts of questions. And then thirdly, I think mentioned here before that you need to take the victim out and put them in the presence of counselors who can be parents, who can be lawyers, who can just be police officers, but somebody, not just the predator or the person she has walked on with. If it's a willing choice, it needs to be established. If it was something that she did because of any form of coercion, that needs to be established. But you need to guide the victim to it also. And many a time, victim doesn't know until it's a few years, a few months down the lane what has happened with them. And lastly, a very important thing is that you need to consider the socioeconomic strata with all of it. A lot of the problem stems from the socioeconomic strata and the situation in which the victims are there. You will not see minorities who fall in middle class or upper middle class converting their religion ever, walking on with Muslim or other boys ever. You will rarely see boys converting or marrying Muslim girls because the situation does not allow. You will only see poor girls from minority communities being lured into such relationships. And police over time has become very, very sensitive to it. We have placed mechanisms in shape of quick registration of FIRs, with introduction of BSOs, with better legislation, with better officers who are only dealing with these crimes, such as in the Hafuz Center and Gender Protection Unit. So I think that we are on the right track, but there needs to be more discussion around this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinesh. I think it's encouraging to know that despite a lot of the challenging experiences, you have shown that it can be better, right? So it can be done. So it's not like, I know the topic itself, the conversation is very, very depressing and hard to solve, but there are things that we've seen, whether it's survivors who've been able to rescue, as well as the cases that we're trying. Due to shortage of time, unfortunately, we won't be able to take around questions from the audience, but at the end of the conversation, we're all here for further conversations as well. So please feel free to reach out to anyone over here. Just one last thing, in your words, अगर आप एक sentence में, can you tell us what needs to be changed to fix this, or to improve this, or to start tackling this in a meaningful way?
The easy fix, I feel, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and while sitting here, you need to establish an age of consent. I think that is the quickest and probably a very tricky fix also, but we need to have an age of consent that needs to be across board, all provinces, all courts. You cannot have your ID card unless you are 18 years of age. You cannot contract a marriage until you are 18 years of age.
गुरु साहब, एक चीज एक सेंटेंस में मैं क्या किस पर फोकस करना चाहिए?
शुक्रिया जी। असल में बात मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि पहले नंबर तो आप सोचें कि हमारे मुल्क में गैर मुस्लिम रहते हैं तो इनका तहफ़्फ़ुज़ करना मुल्क का फ़र्ज़ बनता है, रियासत का फ़र्ज़ बनता है। तो उसको ये करना चाहिए कि बच्ची की राय, माँ बाप की राय हो जाए तो ठीक है। अगर ये बच्ची की राय है क्योंकि वो आपस में जो है ना मिलजुल रहते हैं, उसके बाद ले जाते हैं, लेकिन इसमें कोशिश करो कि अमन के लिए में कोशिश करनी है कि अपने मजहबी लेवल के लोग इकट्ठे हों और वो जो तरीक़ाकार बताए उनके मुताबिक ये होना चाहिए। ये फसाद, ये परेशानी नहीं होनी चाहिए।
चीज़ें तो बहुत सारी हैं जिसमें तब्दीली की ज़रूरत है, लेकिन समराइज करेंगे कि what needs to be done is to look at this problem with the lens of prevention, कि हमें रोकना है। हम हमेशा रिस्पॉन्सिव, अभी तक जितना भी हम देख रहे हैं फायर फाइटिंग कर रहे हैं, केस हो जाता है फिर उसको डील कैसे करना है। हम हमेशा फोकस करते हैं कि जब एक अब्डक्शन हो गई, एक निकाहनामा आ गया, उसके बाद क्या करना है, हमारी कहानी वहाँ से शुरू होती है। 2020 के अंदर एक अनफॉर्चुनेट इंसिडेंट आपको याद होगा और ज़ैनब जो कसूर की ज़ैनब के साथ बच्ची के साथ वाक़या पेश आया था, उसके बाद एक बड़ी रिफॉर्मेटिव लेजिस्लेशन पार्लियामेंट ने एनाक्ट की थी, विच इज़ द ज़ारा एक्ट ऑफ 2020। अनफॉर्चुनेटली इतने प्यारे एक पार्लियामेंट्री जो एक उनकी सोच थी ऐसे ये एक्ट बनाने की, इसके 5 साल गुजर जाने के बाद भी नो रूल्स हैव बीन फ्रेम्ड अंडर दिस एक्ट, तो वो एक टेक्निकली इनइफेक्टिव एक्ट चल रही है। इस एक्ट का मकसद क्या था? इस एक्ट का मकसद ये है कि 18 साल से कम उम्र कोई भी लड़का या लड़की, कोई भी इंसान जो कि 18 साल से कम उम्र है, उसकी रिपोर्ट किसी भी मुल्क के थाने में दी जाती है। फौरी तौर के ऊपर ना सिर्फ वो लोकल पुलिस स्टेशन, ना सिर्फ वो प्रोविंशियल पुलिस, बल्कि फेडरली एडमिनिस्ट्रेट एक बॉडी के तहत पूरे मुल्क के जितने इदारे हैं, जिसमें आपके हसास इदारे भी आ जाते हैं, आपकी टोल प्लाजा वाली पुलिस भी आ जाते हैं, जितने स्टैट्यूटरी आपके इदारे हैं, सब मिलकर एक काम पर सिर्फ हो जाए कि इस बच्चे को फौरी तौर पर रिकवर करके और माँ बाप के पास वापस किया जाए, ताकि आगे की कोई और उसके साथ क्राइम्स हो ना सके। तो प्रिवेंटिव एक्शन करना बहुत जरूरी है। मैं सिर्फ एक और इस चीज पे कमेंट करना चाहूंगा कि हम फोर्स कन्वर्जन की बात करते हैं, एक 1982 PCRLJ पेज 133 से हाई कोर्ट की डबल बेंच की जजमेंट है। एक मुसलमान आदमी ने कलमा पढ़ के अपने आप को मुसलमान जाहिर करके एक मुसलमान लड़की से चाइल्ड मैरिज की थी। सिंध हाई कोर्ट ने बड़ा अच्छा एक रास्ता अपनाया था कि चाइल्ड मैरिज है, बच्ची को हम ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दिस बीइंग एन इलीगल मैरिज वी कैन नॉट अलाउ हर टू अकम्पनी the accused, बट उसकी जो लड़के की कन्वर्जन थी इस केस के अंदर, उस पे जो उन्होंने कमेंट किया वो बहुत खूबसूरत है, काबिल गौर है, और काश हमारी आज की भी अदालतें इसी तरीके से कन्वर्जन को प्रोसीड करें। उन्होंने कहा कि द कन्वर्जन फॉर द पर्पसेस ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग दिस इलीगल मैरिज इट डज नॉट सीम टू बी वॉलंटरी इन आवर व्यू। आज पता नहीं क्यों जब बच्चियों की कन्वर्जन फॉर द पर्पसेस ऑफ एन इलीगल एक्ट करवाई जाती है, तो रादर देन फॉर्मिंग अ प्राइमा फेसी ओपिनियन कि भाई ये एक इलीगल एक्ट के लिए है, इसको हम लीगल क्रेडेंस नहीं दे सकते, हम उस समझ इस्लाम की बेसिस पे फर्दर इंक्वायरी का नारा लगा के बेल भी ग्रांट करते हैं और अक्विट भी करते हैं।
आई नो बहुत प्रेशर है टाइम का। I would definitely wanting to talk about ये जो certificate of accepting Islam. इसकी there is no legal value of this certificate, but unfortunate है the police and the judiciary and the institutions, they all start relying on that religious Qabul Islam sanad, और they should stop doing this. उसका इफेक्ट क्या होता है? बच्ची शीज नेहा, दे स्टार्ट कॉलिंग हर फातिमा, और लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट्स में भी आरजू फातिमा हो गई, और सारी जगहों पर उसको सोशल मीडिया पे, प्रिंट मीडिया में उसको मुस्लिम पोर्ट्रेट करना शुरू कर देती हैं, और फिर जब वो बच्ची वापस आना चाहती है तो उसको अपोस्टेसी और दूसरे रिलीजियस थ्रेट्स हो जाती हैं। तो ये जो कबूल इस्लाम का सर्टिफिकेट है, उसको दिस सर्टिफिकेट highly trusted by the police and by the judiciary, and they believe that this girl who is actually 12 years old or 13 years old, but on the certificate it is stated that she is 19 years old, उसकी एज 19 years कर दी जाती है। नाता सर्टिफिकेट, स्कूल सर्टिफिकेट, रिलीजियस सर्टिफिकेट्स they become of no value before the institutions. So please ये जो कबूल इस्लाम का सर्टिफिकेट है, इसको पुलिस और जुडिशरी इसको ना देखे। और मैं एक और मौका लेकर, इधर मुझे पता चला कि शरीयत कोर्ट के जज साहब भी आए हुए हैं, if he's still sitting here, संगीनी मामले की आजू राजा केस में 7 मार्च 2023 को Sharia court has given a very good order. The abductor who was 45 years old, Azhar, he approached to Sharia court, and Sharia court said कि भी ये जो 18 साल का कानून है, this is very much Islamic, और उसने कहा था कि ये मेरी बीवी है, she should be given to me, and Sharia court said no, she is immature, she is underage, she needs to be 18 years old. 7 मार्च 2023 से ऑर्डर आ गया, but last year उसको उठा के they came to church, our church की ये मुस्लिम लड़की अंदर दुआ कर रही है, फिर उस इलाके में मोटरसाइकिल पर उसकी तस्वीर लेकर they were roaming around और वो कह रहे थे कि ये मुस्लिम है, इसको वापस दिया जाए और उनको इस लिमिटेड थ्रेट की वजह से पाकिस्तान छोड़ना पड़ा। तो प्लीज एक तो ये शादी को फौरी तौर पर जब ये क्राइम है तो शादी नल-एंड-वाइड हो जानी चाहिए। ये बच्चियां अभी तक उनकी बीवियां हैं। This needs to be done. Thank you.
सारे पॉइंट्स सबने कवर करने इसलिए मैं शेल्टर की बात करूँगी कि एक स्टेट की तरफ से जो शेल्टर जहाँ बच्चियाँ भेजी जाती हैं वहाँ पे सारा स्टाफ जो है वो मुस्लिम होता है, तो हमें ऐसे शेल्टर्स चाहिए जो स्टेट की तरफ से ही हों लेकिन जहाँ पे सारा स्टाफ जो है वो मिनॉरिटीज से बिलोंग करता हो, हिंदू हो, क्रिश्चियन हो, जहाँ पे वो बच्चियाँ सेफ फील करें, जो वहाँ पे थेरेपिस्ट हों वो भी मिनॉरिटीज के हों कि ये बच्चियाँ रिकवर कर सकें। एक तो स्टेट शेल्टर चाहिए हमें, और जैसा कि बाकी सब ने कहा कि मैं बस ये ऐड करूँगी कि संदेश इस्लाम को एज वेरिफिकेशन के लिए यूज ना किया जाए ऐसे केसेस में। थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू टू द पैनलिस्ट एंड थैंक यू टू द ऑडियंस फॉर
यहीं से कर दें?
Yeah, but just announce the program a minute later.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you to our Thank you to our panelists for a very powerful and necessary conversation. Now it's on. As we reflect on the dialogue in the Sufi Kalam, as we reflect on the dialogue, I would now be inviting Madam Rabia Javeri Agha, Chairperson of the National Commission for Human Rights, to deliver the concluding remarks. A short introduction: Ms. Agha has served as Federal Secretary at the Ministry of Human Rights, where she played a leading role in drafting and promulgating landmark legislation such as the Hindu Marriage Act of 2017, the ICT Child Protection Act of 2018, and the Juvenile Justice Systems Act of 2018. A graduate of Mount Holyoke College and Blavatnik School of Government at Oxford University, she was the first female president of the Pakistan Administrative Service Association and has received an honorary doctorate in law from Mount Holyoke for her work on women in vulnerable communities. Madam, let us move the, of course.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Justice Anwar, ambassadors, members of the National Commission for Human Rights, member for Ministry of Human Rights, distinguished guests, panelists. You've heard so many sad and painful stories. These painful stories were also part of our commission. We have so far rescued 9 girls who have been victims of forced conversion. And you know, if you see these girls, they're so vulnerable and so innocent. Just give an example of one of the girls. It was her father's friend, and he was living in their house, and he would bribe her with toffee and sweet, and every day take her out to the shop, and one day he just ran off with her. And the parents came to us in desperation, you know. He was crying, the father, the mother was wrought. And the National Commission of Human Rights, we intervened. We were able to rescue the girl. We've rescued 9 girls so far, and then we had to ensure that when we sent her back to the parents, she'd be safe to provide her a transition, to provide her a shelter before we actually could send her back. But what does return really mean? When you go back, your innocence has been taken. You've lost hope in society. You've lost a hope for your future. It's a really horrible return, actually, and that got the commission very interested in matrimonial rights. We started talking about looking at because one of the issues was what action would we take against the Nchr, who actually, 16-year-old girl, she was 15, 16, registered a marriage with a guy who was 50 years old. And we then did a deep dive with civil society. Civil society has been our active partners. And we found out that of 90% of the nikahnamas in Pakistan, some of the major columns are left empty, which is your age determination, which is your right to maintenance, and always your right to divorce. And that got us so concerned that we've now set up a helpline on marriage rights, not for specifically Muslims or Christians or Hindus, but for all people, women who would like to have guidance or advice. It's called 1413. And what we've talked about in today's meeting is how these young girls live at the margin. So we're not just talking about gender, we're talking about children, we're talking about equal citizenship, so many fundamental rights that are being impacted, and Maria has talked about so much. The National Commission of Human Rights we have the powers of the civil court. We have an A status from the United Nations, which doesn't mean that human rights in Pakistan is A status, but it certainly means that we are performing as per the international guidelines, and we've been certified as an A status organization. In that we are speaking truth to power. We regularly share policy recommendations with the government. This report will be part of the report that we have presented to the government, and we've tackled very sensitive matters and very matters that are not generally talked about to the government, and put strong pressure to the government to manifest change. In our powers as a civil court, we resolved about 9,000 cases, of which approximately 50% deal with women or women's rights. But at the end of the day, I think we have to be honest with ourselves that no intervention, no report, no commission order can erase the fear that hangs over many, many members of minority communities, and women are even further down the supply chain, And we can only confront this kind of injustice, inequality, if we kind of look at the reality and try and fix ourselves, and speak out. I think, talk about these issues. There's so much dearth of discourse. I'm very, very grateful to Justice Anwar for being here from the Federal Sharia Court to give us the perspective from the Islamic perspective, from the perspective of the Islamic jurisprudence. So how we can address this issue. I'd like to thank the legal aid, Haya Zahid, Madhya, for an excellent report. I'd like to thank all of you being present here, and my team for all their support. Thank you. And Roxana, and I'm sorry I've been like a dragon fighting for the time, because I know time is of the essence, but thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Your commitment and leadership reminds us that institutional voices can and must stand with the most vulnerable. Thank you very much. We are also deeply honored to have with us our chief guest, Justice Dr. Syed Muhammad Anwar, whose presence today reinforces the importance of judicial leadership on this cause. I'm going to give a short introduction to Justice Saab. Justice Dr. Syed Muhammad Anwar serves as a judge of the Federal Sharia Court of Pakistan and has also held the position of acting Chief Justice He is recognized for a series of landmark judgments upholding the age restriction of the Sindh Child Marriage Restraints Act 2013. His judicial philosophy combines rigorous Islamic scholarship with a steadfast commitment to human rights, gender equality, and social justice, especially for marginalized and vulnerable communities across Pakistan. And I now invite him to please join us on the stage. Thank you, Justice.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما. Chairperson, Human Rights Commission, Honorable Ms. Rabia Javeri Agha, her team, her partner, Legal Aid Society, dear organizers, distinguished guests, diplomats, Assalamu alaikum. I am really obliged that you invited me here to have some conversation on this very important and sensitive issue of our society. I was taking note, and then in the middle of taking notes and hearing the talks, I realized that it's a very vast topic. I would like to highlight this for the barrister here also, to take it very seriously as you do with your other projects also. It is not just, it has not just one angle. It is a matter of primarily consent, tolerance, free will, child marriage, and obviously women's rights, and many more. Then there are lapses in our laws also, and there are some flaws in its implementation also. So we have to take care of all these angles altogether, collectively and separately. You can, if you want to, rather you make several projects out of this one project. It is not one, because it will increase the confusion, if I may say. अगर आप consent की बात कर रही हैं तो वो मतलब this is the issue of every girl in Pakistan. It is not specific to minorities. Yes, it accentuates, its intensity increases when it comes to, or when you deal with the issue with some minority. But this is the issue of every girl in Pakistan. Most of them, not every girl. मतलब हम चाइल्ड मैरिज का इशू जो है वो मेजॉरिटी में भी देखते हैं. कितनी ख़वातीन से पूछा जाता है क्या उनकी मर्ज़ी से शादी हो रही है? कहाँ डिफाइन हुआ है कि कहाँ मर्ज़ी है उसकी? ऐसी एग्जाम्पल्स हमारी सोसाइटी में मौजूद हैं कि जहाँ वालिदैन जो है वो गलत उसकी शादी करा रहे होते हैं अपने किसी पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट के नतीजे में. एक, and then you must have heard one term, the court marriage, which does not exist legally. There is no legal backing of this term in Pakistan. हर जगह हम सुनते हैं जी वो शादी हो गई, दोनों ने मर्जी से की, गए कचहरी, शादी हो गई, कोर्ट मैरिज हो गई. We need some proper legislation कि किस तरह कोर्ट मैरिज हो रही है। अगर कोई किसी सिचुएशन में है, आकिल बालिग लड़की लड़का दोनों अपनी मर्ज़ी से शादी करना चाह रहे हैं, तो उस पर ये नहीं कि कोर्जन हो रही है और बाद में उसको आप इमोशनली ब्लैकमेल कर रहे हैं। फ्रॉम ईदर साइड एब्यूज़ हो रहा होता है दोनों तरफ से। कोर्ट मैरिज, आपको फैमिली कोर्ट जो है वो ज़्यादातर जो कि होना चाहिए कि आप उसमें पूरा फैमिली सिस्टम के जो इश्यूज आ सकते हैं वो उसमें उसको ट्रीट करे फैमिली कोर्ट। लेकिन हो क्या रहा है कि वो सिर्फ तलाक और सेपरेशन को कर रहे हैं। शादी करने के लिए भी उसको आप इसमें इंट्रोड्यूस कराया जा सकता है। यानी कि ये सब चीज़ें ऐसी हैं कि जो आप जैसा जो प्लेटफॉर्म है वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग, और आपका जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है डिस्पाइट बीइंग पार्ट ऑफ गवर्नमेंट यू आर सो करेजियस, बीइंग अ पर्सन ऑफ चेयरपर्सन ऑफ दिस कमीशन, आपने कितना काम किया है, अभी भी मुस्तकिल कर रही है। चाइल्ड मैरिज के इशू को हाईलाइट करने वाला आपका फोरम है ये। इसको सेग्रीगेट करके वन बाय वन जहाँ तक इस्लाम की बात है तो उसमें बुनियादी देयर इज वर्स 256 ऑफ सूरह बकरा, ला इकराह फिद्दीन क़द तबय्यन रुश्द मिनल गय। इस्लाम में ज़बरदस्ती नहीं है। देयर इज़ नो कंपल्शन इन अवर रिलीजन इन इस्लाम। ट्रूथ खुद वाज़ेह होता है। लेकिन अब हमने आवर हिस्ट्री इज़ विटनेस टू दैट कि ये गोके इल्ज़ाम लगता है हमने जनाब यहाँ पे कन्वर्जन की, इस्लाम तलवार के ज़ोर पे फैला, लेकिन जस्ट वन फैक्ट दैट वेयर दे रूल्ड फॉर मोर देन 800 years in that capital Delhi, in 1947 वहाँ पे मुसलमान मेजॉरिटी नहीं थी। अगर वही एलिगेशन सही होती कि जी आपने तलवार के ज़ोर पे और खोपड़ियों के पहाड़ लगा दिए, तो दैट वाज ड्यू टू आवर रिलीजन। ये हमारी टीचिंग है, ये हमारी हिस्ट्री है जिसको हम अब भूलते जा रहे हैं। ज़रूरत उसकी है कि वो हम उसी पे अपनी तालीमात पे रहें। वी शुड फोकस ऑन आवर रिलीजन, इट्स ट्रू टीचिंग, which is also part of our constitution. कि हाँ हमने, वही मैं दोबारा दोहराऊंगा कि ख़वातीन को हमने, जो मुसलमान ख़वातीन हैं उनको भी उनके बेसिक राइट्स नहीं दिए। चाहे कि आप नॉन मुस्लिम्स की बात करें जो वैसे ही डिप्राइव्ड हैं, जो जिसकी हमारे रिलीजन में कोई इतनी सी भी ना गुंजाइश है न जगह है, बल्कि उसके ऊपर सज़ा होनी चाहिए कि जहाँ आपने फोर्सफुली अगर किसी को कन्वर्ट करने की कोशिश की या ये साबित हो गया कि फोर्सफुली हुआ है, तो ये एक सज़ा, काबिल सज़ा जुर्म होना चाहिए। चाइल्ड मैरिज की जिस तरह बात हुई कि बहरहाल ये एक अच्छी डायरेक्शन में लेजिस्लेशन जा रही है। पूरा मुल्क में एक डेट होनी चाहिए, एक एज होनी चाहिए। क्या उसकी डेफिनेशन है? रुश्द के बग़ैर आप कैसे, जब आप किसी को कह रहे हैं आकिल और बालिग, तो सुई जूस, it is not only related to age, the physical age, mental age is also relevant. आप उसको, you can attach it with the education and many other factors, कि उसको अगर फ्री विल इस्तेमाल करने का बच्ची को मौका दिया जाता तो उसको इतना टाइम उसके पास होना चाहिए कि आम रुश्द जो है, जो पढ़ी लिखी बच्ची जो है, वो उतने अरसे में हासिल कर लेती है कि अपने मुताल्लिक़ कोई फ़ैसला कर सके, उसके बाद ही वो एज होनी चाहिए। ये सारी बातें, इस पे बहुत सारी बातें और भी की जा सकती हैं, लेकिन ये तो गालिबन, अगर इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, दिस इज़ द फर्स्ट सेमिनार ऑन दिस टॉपिक फ्रॉम योर फोरम. So इसको try to segregate all the issues related to this issue. The consent, age, child marriage, forced conversion. जो अभी वो गालिबन सिंध से हमारी बरादरी के, वो हिंदू बरादरी के जो हमारे सिटीजन थे, जिस तरह वो जिक्र कर रहे थे, यानी कि सुन के शर्मिंदगी होती है कि किस तरह हम ट्रीट कर रहे हैं. Despite the fact that Pakistan is perhaps the only country in the world which has representation of minorities in her flag, हम उसको भी रियलाइज नहीं कर रहे कि क्या उसका मतलब है, क्या उसकी इम्पोर्टेंस है, कि वो हम पाकिस्तान की डेफिनेशन जो हम दुनिया को दिखाना चाहते हैं, जो हमारी शक्ल दुनिया को नज़र आती है, वो ये बता रही है कि इसमें ये मेजॉरिटी रह रही है और ये जो हैं ये भी इक्वली वही हैं. ये हमारी पिक्चर है, आया हमारे अमाल में और हमारे बिहेवियर में वो उसकी रिफ्लेक्शंस हो रही हैं. उसको हमें खुद देखना पड़ेगा. और इस तरह की जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, ये तो खुशकिस्मती है कि इतनी इम्पोर्टेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की इतनी वेल एजुकेटेड और सेंसिटिव खातून जो है वो शी इज़ हेडिंग दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कि जो हर इशू को इन डेप्थ उसकी असल के साथ समझ रही है और समझा रही है, उसके सोल्यूशन पेश कर रही है. तो इसको ये बैरिस्टर ना आपको और आपकी टीम को, आपकी टीम में बैरिस्टर मलिहा ने बहुत अच्छी वो दी प्रेजेंटेशन. बाकी सब जितने भी स्पीकर्स बोले बड़े दिल से बोले, सबका अपना अपना एक एक्सपीरियंस है कि वो उसको आप समेटें और इसको बजाय इसके कि जंबल अप करें, इसको ये शायद आपको इतना अच्छा ना लग रहा हो, ये बार बार मेरा कहना कि जंबल अप हुआ हुआ है, लेकिन आप इसको ठंडे दिल से सोचें तो ये इतने सारे मुख्तलिफ इश्यूज़ हैं जो अलहदा ही सॉल्व होंगे. मेरा ख्याल है ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लूँगा. वंस अगेन थैंकफुल टू यू फॉर इनवाइटिंग मी एंड शेयरिंग माय व्यूज़ एंड हियरिंग योर व्यूज़. इस दुआ के साथ कि आपको इस पे कोई एक जल्दी और बहुत अच्छा फ्रूटफुल एक आप इस किसी कंक्लूजन पे पहुँच. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
We're going to take 2 minutes to take a quick group photo, and I would request the panelists to please join us on the stage. उसके बाद हाई टिकली ब्रेकफास्ट They're setting it up.
They're just coming to just give him a proper intro.